the RTM September 19th committee meetings. It's good to see all of you that are here in person, and I wish the rest of you were here, but I'm glad we have this virtual component to start with. So just as a note, when you want to speak or ask a question, you need to hold the button on the microphone. Otherwise, it's not a live mic, which might be good for some of us. But so let's just rise and say the pledge. Okay, our first item on the agenda tonight is the ethics reappointment of Nancy Billington. Nancy is here, so could you have a seat at this table in front of us? Good evening. Thanks for coming tonight. This is our first in-person meeting or hybrid meeting, so you're one of the lucky ones here. So welcome, and I guess just tell us a little bit about, this is a reappointment. We've approved you in the past, and just maybe tell us about why you want to continue and maybe some of the things that have happened over your tenure on this commission.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. I'm not sure if Jerry can hear this, but they can't hear very well on WebEx.
I don't think I can speak any loud. I mean, I could yell, but I don't think. Well, hope everybody had a great summer. I'm glad that it's getting cool at night. I hit some golf balls this weekend. I hadn't played in a long time. You good now? Rock and roll?
Tom Lambert can hear you, so hopefully everyone else can.
Check your audio settings at home. Thank you.
Mark, we can hear you loud and clear.
We can hear you and I think they can hear you over at the amphitheater. Okay, sorry. Let's continue.
Okay. Nancy Billington. I am up for, I guess, reappointment on the Ethics Committee, where I was for 2 years under the chairmanship of Alex Trumbecki. It's a small group. We had, in those 2 years, I believe, 2 matters that both were what I would say concerning with protocol and I guess making some rules and precedents being I guess adhered to, and it was just really just it was a lot of communication, I think, is what I would say. Making sure that people understood how to communicate issues within the town government. It was good experience for me. I'm happy to serve. I think it just required a lot of thought about little details that sometimes everyone doesn't think of, in terms of maybe someone who is has a business in town and has a certain type of connection with certain employees or maybe services, and then at the same time there might be a matter that's being considered in town in terms of regulation or policies, and make sure that everyone understands that they need to reveal that. I don't know how much detail you want to get into those things, but as I said, a lot of looking at fine details and making sure everyone's on the same page with what's appropriate and what should be communicated publicly.
Okay, thank you. I'm just the opening act. These guys will be asking the questions. I personally don't have any. Does anybody have any questions for Nancy? Representative Georgiadis?
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Hi, Nancy. Thank you for coming and thank you for serving. My question revolves around an event that happened in the past where there was an ethics situation and one of the members resigned and there was no quorum. How do you view that? And would you do the same, or would you always stay on your committee till the end in order to make sure that there's a quorum and issues can be resolved in a timely manner? Thank you.
So you're saying this happened before I was on the committee?
Yes, it
Yeah,
happened.
okay,
I
in
think,
the past.
maybe 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
There was an issue,
Okay.
and then one of the members resigned, and there was no quorum.
I guess accepting since some type of medical situation, I can't imagine ever doing that. I mean, that's a very important commitment to see through the discussion as well as the, have a quorum. And no, I don't think that's proper.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Anybody else? Representative Vergara.
Hi, Jill Vergara for District 7. Thank you so much for your service and for volunteering to serve again. I was wondering if you know anything about the whistleblowing process and whether ethics is involved at all in that process.
I have to say that I don't personally know any of the details of the whistleblowing process, and we have not had that discussion. So I can't answer whether or not it's an appropriate matter to come to our committee.
Is it possible, since the town attorney is here, for him to come and tell us how whistleblowing is dealt with and whether it's possible to involve ethics in this?
Yes, sir. Attorney Baldwin, please.
Hi, Jill. Good evening, everyone. The whistleblowing part of the website and service that the town runs is very separate from the Ethics Commission insofar as it is a portal for an anonymous claims to be made and reviewed and disseminated. And if it rises, it requires you to communicate with the person who's blowing the proverbial whistle. And it always includes the opportunity for that person to make a formal ethics complaint. And as you know, the charter is very specific as to the process and procedures related to an ethics matter which comes before that commission.
But who oversees this? Who do these complaints get bumped up to?
It basically goes to the HR department and myself, the town attorney.
Okay. Is there any way for ethics to serve as some kind of audit committee for that? Because it does seem a little problematic to have only the administration be reviewing whistleblowing when the whistleblowing is generally about the administration, or can be.
Yeah, that would be something that the Ethics Commission could take up. The thing is that it's the person who has the ability to make the complaint can remain anonymous if they choose to, but they're, as a standard procedure, advised that if they want to pursue the matter, they can file a complaint, but it doesn't end there. Obviously, depending on the nature of the so-called whistleblowing situation, it may not actually rise to an ethics violation so much as it does to some other town policy, state statute, or the like. So it has to be kind of filtered out to determine where it should go from there. If it's a departmental issue, it's brought to the attention of the department head and it goes through the channels.
Yeah, I realize that it wouldn't always rise to the level of an ethics complaint. I just think that we appoint people like Ms. Billington, who we think uphold certain standards of ethics, and I would like to see them utilized to try to protect the town in this way, if it's possible, and if it's something that ethics committee members, commission members would be willing to do. And I would love to work with them to do that because I think it would be helpful for the town.
Thank you, Representative Vergara. Representative Zesma?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Liz Esmer, District 4. Hi, Nancy. Thank you for your service and for offering to re-up your commitment. So this is a little bit of a reverse question. Does anything ever come before ethics that has to be outsourced somewhere else by the nature of it or within the restrictions of what the Ethics Commission can actually deal with themselves?
I'm not sure what you mean by outsource. Certainly, we, on occasion, would speak to the town attorney about a matter and consult the charter and other little ways to make our decision on where it should go.
So all matters are resolved within the committee itself, the commission?
Yes, I would say that they have been. But again, I believe there were only 2 matters, maybe 3, in the 2 years. And
That's a good thing.
Yes, it was a good thing. But I can't speak to anything before
Right.
that. I
Okay, just so I know members of the public and maybe even some members of the body here may not be fully aware of the full scope and the possibility of procedures and where they may fall outside of your charge or your purview.
Right,
so.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we would certainly be open to discussion if something like that came up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
For sure. Okay.
Thank you, Representative Zesma. Anybody else? Representative Spolier, anybody on the chat have?
There's no one else in the chat for
Okay.
questions.
Looks like there's no more questions. You're not available next week, or can you be available? What's the 19th?
Yeah, right now I'm not available. If it changes, I can let you know.
Okay.
I could do it certainly virtually if that's,
Okay.
is that what you mean?
Yep. Or, yeah, either way, we're good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, and thanks for your service, and thanks for coming out tonight. Okay. All right. Next item is the 150 Villa Avenue acquisition. Attorney Baldwin, Mr. Wendt, and Mr. Hurley, you're up to bat. We have 2 here and 1 virtual, right? Mr. Wendt?
This is Jim Wendt. I'm virtual, but I think Bill Hurley is in the room as well as Mr. Baldwin.
They are both here, and looks like they're ready to go.
Yes, we are, Jim. Thanks. Okay, but before you is the purchase, or to approve the purchase of the 150 Villa Avenue property. This property will enable the town to create open space in a densely developed neighborhood and provide detention, water quality, and environmental improvements to the Rooster River watershed. The parcel also allows the town direct access to 2 stormwater pipes and the Villa Avenue Bridge/culvert. Currently, the town must receive permission, contact the property owner to open up a locked gate to gain access to maintain a stream head wall and the bridge culvert. It would also provide a small work area should the bridge and culvert ever need repair or replacement. And basically, I'm here to answer any questions. I could add that it's my understanding that the town is also working with Aspetuck Land Trust to help manage and maintain this parcel, combining manpower and resources for any environmental improvements, passive open space amenities such as a short, narrow walking paths, plantings and the clearing of any invasive species if present. We're also going to be working with their conservation department, tree warding and zoning for any other items that come up regarding the management of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Mr. Baldwin, you have more to add?
I'll just simply add that this property is in a part of town which has very little open space. It's one of the few remaining parcels like it. It came to our attention, the administration's attention, that the owner was considering developing it into a subdivision. That was followed by discussions where we engaged the property owner, neighbors, and kind of built a little coalition. And I have to say that the seller has been very cooperative with the town in getting creative to acquire the property, which if you look at the agenda resolution, is technically a donation of property to the town of, 1.92 acres, which would be otherwise a 3-lot subdivision approved by the TPZ, and the other 1.79 acres is mostly wetlands, which will be utilized for the purposes of the Rooster River flood mitigation efforts that Mr. Hurley spoke about.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also like to just remind the body that it is the RTM's purview to determine the purpose of this property and its future use. But what's in the resolution is what's been suggested based both on the Rooster River flood mitigation as well as the hopeful collaboration with the Aspetuck Land Trust.
Okay. Any questions? Representative Wolk.
Alexander, hey. Representative Jay Wolk from District 5. How are you, Mr. Hurley? It's good to see you again. Thanks for everything that you've been doing to help our situation with the Rooster River, and good to see you, Jim. My question is this property already flooding from the river that you're talking about now, correcting that so it won't flood anymore after we do all this work on it?
It has flooded a couple of times in the past. I remember in 2007 it had flooded. It had also flooded in the storm of 2018. I am not sure if it was flooded during hurricane, the storm remnants of Ida, because that happened at midnight, so I don't know. There's, as I said, 2 streams or 2 storm pipes that go in, merge with the stream or tributary that's there. So all 3 of these waterways go right to the Villa Avenue Bridge and culvert. By disconnecting some of those pipes, allowing more free flow to cover the area, we might actually try to flood a certain area, say a couple more inches, so it doesn't back up onto Algonquin, because that neighborhood gets flooded. And so that's one of the neighborhoods that should see an improvement. Not this is not the magic wand or this won't solve any flooding problems, but this can only help the situation.
That's fine. Thanks, Bill.
Any other questions? Representative Spolier?
Representative Bateson has a question online.
Thank you. Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. Can you hear me?
Oh, well, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Hi. Quick question. Mr. Baldwin was cutting out a little bit. I just want to make sure I understand. It seems like there's 1 parcel. There's going to be 3 subdivided lots and a wet parcel. Are all of those going to be included in the transfer or the purchase?
I missed the last part.
I just want to make sure. I heard that there was, I'm going to say, 3 subdivided parcels and 1, I'll call it a wet parcel. So all those 4 pieces comprise the 1 lot that is going to be purchased.
That's correct. Technically, The 3 parcels which make up the approved subdivision will be donated to the town, and the balance of that, the one, I believe, what did I say it was, the
I'm sorry, Mr.
1.92
Bateson?
acres. Thank you.
Can you just speak a little closer to the microphone?
sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, follow up.
I couldn't see who was speaking.
That's going to be purchased technically for the 400,000. But in essence, the entire piece of property, 3.71 acres, is going to be acquired for the sum of $400,000.
Okay, and it seems like in the purchase agreement, the seller is going to be going through the process of subdividing the lots. Are they doing that just simply to increase the value for tax purposes, donation-wise?
That is correct, and that has been approved.
I'm
Okay,
sorry, I
and
meant
that has
Mr.
no
Baldwin.
bearing on the value that we're paying.
No, it does not. And the value that the town is paying is just under the assessed value.
Okay, and just from the administration's point of view, in years past, whenever I've been involved in several property acquisitions, typically, or in the past, it has been managed or overseen by the Conservation Department afterwards. I'm kind of intrigued by the involvement of the Aspetuck Land Trust. Is that a new direction we're going in property acquisitions?
Is unique to this property, and it's only for that portion which is not going to have the Conservation Commission oversee everything. But technically, the Conservation Commission will be overseeing everything, and any agreement with the Aspetuck Land Trust will require their consent and approval, so long as the controls are in place that they require.
Okay, and one final question to, I'm going to say, Mr. Hurley. I saw in reading the backup material, it doesn't seem like any of this land is suitable for, I'm going to say, a water detention area because a lot of it is wet. Is that your take on this too, that it's just, it's basically going to help us in, managing those bulkheads and that there is no possibility to use this for the water detention?
That's correct, Ed. This would only have what I'd call a very minor impact on the entire Rooster River watershed for detention. Because the area is wet, we could build up a couple of feet of storage, but that would be about it. It's a relatively small area, and like you said, because it's wet already. But one of the advantages, as I said, we have before, is that we can shorten up the pipes, which should allow some of the storm water that does back up on Algonquin to spread out more onto the property. That would help that neighborhood.
And currently now, we don't do that because it's private property, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bateson. Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I think you answered my question already as far as the flooding, but I did have a sort of follow-up question on that, which is the dry part. Is there no detention possibility there, and why not?
The quote, dry part would only be a very small amount, and that's where we'd probably seek to maybe excavate a little of that out to help spread from the 2 stormwater pipes.
Got it, thank you. And to Mr. Baldwin, so there's an association there, a homeowners association. What are the ramifications of buying land there and of transferring it to the Aspetuck Land Trust? Is there any issue there at all?
No, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I want to make it perfectly clear that the Aspetuck Land Trust is not acquiring the property. They are simply, in principle, have agreed to help maintain it, maybe put a natural park there with natural wood-like pieces, but it's all conceptual right now. But the town would maintain ownership of the entire property.
Okay, thanks. And there's no issue with buying the town from the association and paying association fees, or have you talked about that at all? Or
The association actually has indicated a willingness to make a contribution towards the improvement of the area that's considered for a park.
Yeah, I know. I'm a member of the association. I'm the treasurer of the association. But I'm just curious whether I'm trying to get ahead of my annual meeting in a couple weeks and figure out what the relationship would be, in terms of owning property in the association, what that looks like.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any intent in this administration or in any of the proposals to actually transfer ownership of any part of the property to any other entity. The idea was for this to be a collaborative effort with the Aspetuck Land Trust, the neighborhood association, and the town in coming up with a concept and a long-term plan for its maintenance. That's as far as we've gotten.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Representative Garskoff. Representative Carson?
Can you hear me? Hi, Laura Carson, District 4. So I just want to understand, and Mr. Bateson hit on it, that it does say in the study that it's not recommended to be used as a detention area. It's not, and they said they have other sites that they see that are in this backup that are more suitable, but it will have some impact on helping with the flooding.
That's
Right.
correct.
And then it does say, it does recommend that rerouting of the outfalls of those systems be pursued instead. Would you be doing any of that?
Yeah, those are the two stormwater
Those are
pipes
the-
I referenced before.
Yeah,
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carson. Representative Wackerman, did you have something? Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Wackerman, District 7. Maybe you responded to Representative Garskoff and I missed it. If the town owns this, does it have to become a member of this association since that property was a member? I don't know.
That's a good question. I guess I should defer to the association, but I'm not sure if it's necessary, but I don't think so.
We should probably have a conversation about it offline or something. Yeah.
I look forward to it.
The other question I had was, since it looks like you're using some ARPA money to purchase this property, am I right about that? From the
That's
the
correct.
Rooster River. So it sounds like I think you said, Bill, that it'll have a very small impact on the Rooster River flooding. I'm wondering if it's money we should hold off on for detention pools that might be more effective to deal with the flooding. It sounds wonderful for open space, but just in terms of the flood.
You bring up a good point, but like I said before, is if you imagine the Algonquin, which is just upstream. I mean, I have a map if you need to see it, of Algonquin. That neighborhood is like in a little bit of a bowl there. And there were 3 houses or 4 houses in particular that got bombed out in the storm of 2018 and Ida. And I know at least once before in the mid-2000s. And so doing a detention pond, which just to let everybody know for informational purposes, we have one of the ones on Tunxus Hill Park. And then we have a double detention basin up by Fairchild Wheeler Golf Course. The studies deemed that those would be the most, quote, bang for the buck, where you get the most benefit. This one here was a smaller one. And as I said, it's a slight benefit. It's not going to be zero. There'll be some, but it's not going to be anywhere near those 2 larger ones. But for water quality purposes, access to the culvert, open space, and environmental issues, and helping out the Algonquin, that small pocket neighborhood, this was one of the only ways that we could help them out.
Thank you.
Representative Graceffa?
Andrew Graceffa, District 6. Real quick question, I think. Was there a phase 1 environmental study done for the subject property areas?
Yes, there was, and it came back fine.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to check. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Graceffa. Representative Astorita?
Yeah, thank you. Ken Astorita, District 10. I just wanted to piggyback on Representative Wackerman's question. Are there any other options to address this problem? And if you go forward with this one, could that potentially preclude other solutions?
The only way would be is if we ran out of money or we need more money, we would seek more funding through the town process. We're always looking for other ways of getting and obtaining grants. We probably have at least 30 of them in town already, but we keep on hearing there's more coming. And so we constantly are looking at other grant possibilities as well. So I guess in your question, yeah, there's a slight possibility if the boards were to hold a firm line and no more funding after this, yes, there would be the potential you could use this money somewhere else. But like I said before, you were talking about a densely developed area that could become a 3-lot subdivision. It's helping out Algonquin if and when, there'd be a time that we have to replace or repair the Villa Avenue Bridge and Culvert. These are all things that there was so the whole combined benefit, I do think it's money well spent.
Thank you, Representative Astorita. Representative Zesma.
Thank you, and hi, Jim and Bill. Thanks for being here. I noticed there's no appraisal in the backup, and I'm wondering if you can tell me what it said and if one can be provided to us.
There is no appraisal. As I mentioned earlier, it's assessed at over $400,000 for the entire piece of property. And so we thought that was adequate, especially considering the 3-lot subdivision, which only increases the cost or projected cost. So it would be clearly far more than $400,000 today.
Yeah, it's about twice, I think, what the last sale price was in, I think, 2013. So the 3-lot subdivision, considering we have wetlands here, you're talking about setting the wetlands portion of it aside and still having 3 lots to develop.
That is correct, and that has been approved.
And are there any deed restrictions?
The deed restriction would be associated with this purchase.
Not existing.
Not to my knowledge, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zesma. Representative Vergara.
Thank you. Jill Vergara for District 7. First, I wanted to say I just love the idea of purchasing land for open space purposes and also for flood mitigation. So I really appreciate that this was pursued. And I just have some procedural questions that when purchases come before us, I think this has been an issue before, and maybe there should be some kind of checklist because I know that we have an ordinance for real estate purchases. And I was happy to see that TPZ reviewed it and we got that information, conservation and inland wetlands, but land acquisition is also supposed to be involved. Did they review this and approve it?
Early into the investigation as to how possibly to acquire the property, there were discussions with Land Acquisition Commission, but it was seized upon the fact that there was the ARPA funding for flood mitigation, and that was the direction that we went into. I would have to look back on those emails and to see how far it went as to whether there was a formal recognition or even a vote by the LAC, to your point. But it came very close. If not, we actually had that discussion and that conclusion was reached by that commission. But I would have to check.
Okay, I would like to make sure that that was done because I do think that it's required by ordinance. I mean, I'm not positive, but I thought so. And related to land acquisition, they have a land acquisition trust. So I was wondering why we weren't maybe utilizing that funding rather than the ARPA funding, which is, a very confined pot.
Yeah, again, would have to look back at the kind of historical emails at the beginning of this, but if I recall correctly, and I'll find out for you, I don't believe that they had sufficient funds in that trust, but I would have to check.
How do they amass funds in that trust?
How do they amass them? Well, I know that with transactions, there's supposed to be a certain amount dedicated towards conservation. The details I don't have off the top of my head right now, but I think donations and that sort of thing.
I think it's a great commission to have, and I'm hopeful that we could maybe utilize them more to purchase more lands and get more open space all across the town and get more flood mitigation uses through these kind of acquisitions.
I'll assure you that we have had numerous discussions with the Land Acquisition Commission and on several different properties, but of course it wouldn't be appropriate to speak about those tonight. And the real property part of the code kind of speaks to that, about the ability for the administration to negotiate without having to go before boards and commissions. So that's been recognized.
Will Board of Finance participate in this in any way, and when is that necessary?
The ARPA funding has been authorized already, so there is no role for the Board of Finance to play as this has been presented, which is to use the ARPA funding.
Okay, because I thought in that ordinance that I read, they are supposed to sign a waiver for purchasing of any kind of real property, 6 members of the Board of Finance. And if that is necessary, I just would like to make sure that that's checked off the box.
Yeah, of course.
I have a couple more questions. One is related to what Representative Garskoff was talking about in terms of it being a part of the Brooklawn Association. I'm just worried that we owe fees annually. We will owe fees annually if we're a part of this association. So I'd like to know that ahead of time if that is the case. I'm also worried about deed restrictions like Representative Zezima, and I'd like to make sure that we've checked to make sure that there are none. I was sent something that I don't completely understand about the property and the subdivisions made in Brooklawn Park Association. And it looks like there's a road running through the town, through the property, Pequot. So I just would like to make sure that there are no deed restrictions on this property before we make the purchase. And then with regards to the language of the resolution, you said that the RTM has the power to determine what the purpose is, and I would like to make sure that this is not developed in any way, that it remains open space stewarded by Aspetuck. So I would hopefully like to remove that word in the last paragraph, development, and just keep it to collaborate on future maintenance of such real property, dedicated and passive recreational purposes. And then in the paragraph before it, there's just a typo. RIA should just be area. And one more clarification. In the backup materials, it says that we're purchasing 3.8 acres for $400,000. But when we add up the acreage defined in the resolutions, it comes out to 3.71. And I don't know if it was just an approximation for the backup material or what that discrepancy is.
Yeah, I can't explain that, but I did rewrite the resolution itself to make sure that it clearly stated the amount of property, which is the 3.71 acres. So that is correct. That's the correct number.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vergara. Representative Parham?
Cindy Parham, District 2. Isn't it an advantage to have the people selling it to us to have the small fee to pay the appraisal that Representative Zezima mentioned for like $400 or $500, couldn't they know exactly how much their donation would be? Wouldn't that be more advantageous to them to know exactly what they're giving as a gift, so that they know, like, isn't it a benefit to them to have an appraisal? And I'm surprised they didn't ask for one.
To your point, it's for them to request an appraisal which would satisfy I assume, the tax authorities that the valuation is correct, but that's not something which is incumbent upon the town. The town code, the real property code for the town of Fairfield, does not absolutely require that an actual assessment be done. There's some room, and considering the property assessment prior to the subdivision being approved was already by our tax assessor appraised at a greater value, we thought that would be sufficient for all town bodies. I mean, we could get an appraisal done, but that would then include the 3 subdivisions, and to your point, it may be redundant as to what the seller is going to do ultimately anyway, but for the purposes of this body, I'm genuinely not sure if you need it, but if it's something that you would require for some reason, then I guess we could do that in short order.
Thank you, Representative Perham. Anybody in the chat? Representative Spolier?
Nobody in the chat.
Thank
right
you. Anybody else in the room? So, well, let's start off by, I kind of jumped into this meeting tonight. So Representative Zesma, do you have some announcement for us tonight?
I do. I would like to announce that Michelle McCabe is our newest member, replacing Alice Kelly in District 4, who has resigned. One unfortunate thing is that we were unable, for technical reasons, to conduct our SLMC meeting this afternoon to provide her committee appointment, but we will get that done before next week. So welcome, Michelle, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Representative Zesma. She is all sworn in, right, Betsy? Thank you. Okay, Representative McCabe.
Thank you, Michelle McCabe, District 4. Forgive my ignorance, for as you've learned, I am brand spanking new, but my question is, has the town, in partnership with the Land Acquisition Commission, do you have like a long-term plan for either flood mitigation or open space conservation where you've already identified perhaps parcels or projects or locations that, if funding were to become available, that they would be ones that you would immediately go to? Is this purchase part of any longer range planning that you've done?
I think the answer to your question really speaks to the purpose of the Land Acquisition Commission itself. And they have regular meetings, and they do have properties identified. I can't go further than that, other than to say that there's definitely the interest and motivation of the commission as mandated by the town that created them to have a plan. It's a question of money usually, but I'm not going to speak for the commission.
And they've already seen this parcel and have agreed that this is a priority for them.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we have had discussions with them, but when it became a matter not for them to acquire the property, which would otherwise be under their purview and their procedures, we kind of pivoted away from that. But again, I'll look to see just how far it went in terms of that commission reviewing it and giving it their stamp of approval, so to speak.
Thank you. That would be great, because I would just, if they were wholeheartedly interested in this purchase as well for their longer range, thinking around flooding or open space, that would certainly go a long way.
I would be surprised if they weren't for purchasing any open property. I'm sure that they would approve, but again, I won't speak for them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCabe, and again, welcome. Representative Graceffa.
Representative Graceffa, sorry, I should have followed up with this in the last time I asked a question, but for the Phase 1 environmental report, could you could you provide that as a backup material, just for due diligence? I just want to make sure we have everything, all the boxes checked. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Graceffa.
And just as a follow-up with that land
Mr. Hurley, go
acquisition committee, Tim Bishop, I believe, is one of the main employees involved. I don't know if he's the chairman or not of the land acquisition, but we've been dealing with Tim. He's definitely had meetings with Jim Baldwin and myself, and I have to believe he's filled them in on the ongoing proceedings here. So I have to believe the land acquisition is very familiar with this through Tim Bishop.
Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Mr. Hurley, so this property is currently a wetland. I know wetlands, there are different levels of wetlands, vernal ponds, other things. So in taking this wetland or wet area and flooding it several times a year, will the status, definition, or will it change this wetland? Will any, you know what I mean, like, will it kill the tadpoles, basically?
In a nutshell, the property was surveyed by a wetland soil scientist. They had it all flagged. The areas that were not wetlands is how they were able to develop, quote, develop potentially 3 lots. So the answer to your question is there's significant amount of wetlands. If I had to take a quick guess, I'm going to say 60 or 70%, but please don't quote me on it. The remaining 30% is where they would be able to do that development if it was allowed to go forward without this purchase. So with that 30%, typically what would happen is, as I said, that would be involved where we could do some plantings. We might do some excavation to increase some of the storage. And then typically with most of the environmental water quality improvements, we have, if you can imagine, like a large plunge pool or a deep pool for some sedimentation. There's like 3 different levels of water elevations, and that's what would be used here. So, you know, maybe you have a deep pool for, you know, maybe it's 1 or 2 foot deep, then you have maybe like 6 or 8 inches deep, and then you have a relatively dry area until you had a major storm where some of that would overflow into that area. So there'd be like 3 different water quality, we'll call them basins or environmental basins, where they have all different plantings, if that answers your question. And, you know, all different wetland shrubbery. They sometimes call the area just above the wetlands upland, and so those are maybe where you have your berry bushes or something like that.
So rain garden plantings and things like that. Okay, and so the value of the land as a wetland would be preserved?
Definitely, and again, this plan would have to go back to the conservation as inland wetlands, so they would have a major say in what's being proposed here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Representative Diaz.
Representative Will Diaz from District 5. Mr. Hurley, I do love this project. I think it's a great that we're purchasing some open space and for the people to use it. And I know we're doing some flood mitigation here, but I wonder how this affects the timeline of and funding of the detention ponds for the possibility in the Tunxus Hill area park there, because as you know, we've had some pretty intense flooding over especially that last storm that we had in that area. So I just wonder if this is going to affect the timeline or the funding.
It shouldn't, because it's going to be done concurrently. Right now, those 2 detention ponds that we mentioned before are going through the permit process right now as we speak. And so, you know, by the time we get our ducks in order with the final purchase, present plans to conservation to do that work. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm going to say it's 6 to 8 months, which is about, hopefully, the time that we would get the permits. Although the permits could be longer, but we're going to try to, matter of fact, I'm meeting with the DEP later this week to go over those 2 sites that we had just mentioned. And so as a way to expedite those permits, because they can go anywhere from 8 to 15 months. So if they're at the same timeline, it would be perfect time. And if it's a little bit longer for the permits, well, then we could start doing some of this work ahead of time. But they're related, but they're not dependent on each other.
Yes, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Diaz. Nobody in the chat?
We're all set in chat.
Nobody in person at the table? All right, Mr. Hurley, Attorney Baldwin, thank you very much for coming tonight. And we'll move on from there to charter revision, explanatory text authorization. And Mr. Baldwin, I guess you're already ready to go in that seat. And Attorney Steve Mednick, you're virtually with us.
He is virtual.
I am here.
Great.
I'm having a hard time hearing Attorney Baldwin when he speaks. I don't know if he has a mic and he can speak closer to, otherwise I hear everybody else pretty well.
How's this?
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, he's not used to this. It's new to him.
He's very shy.
Yeah.
Steve, I'll let you take the lead on this, if you would, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Town Attorney. Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, I'm really pleased to be here. I've heard so much about the RTM and met a number of you during the process in the last 12, 14 months that we've been going through the charter process. And so it's an honor to appear before you this evening. And I would be remiss, and I want to point out for the record that we are here because the statute that we're operating under, 9-369B, requires an RTM to approve the explanatory text for referenda. And the charter revision process necessarily is a referendum. And I apologize for, in the resolution that went before the Board of Selectmen, I mistakenly read it to have it within their authority, and it's pretty clear that the authority is the authority of the RTM. So it is my double pleasure to be here as you exercise your discretion with respect to the explanatory text. This statute permits the municipality, the town clerk in particular, with the approval of the town attorney, to develop a summary of the local question and proposal that is objective. It's not designed to advocate approval or disapproval of the proposal or the question. In this case, there is one question on charter revision. It also requires dissemination of the explanatory text through at the various polling places. I think at least 3 posters at each polling place. Every applicant for a AB, an absentee ballot, will get the explanatory text. And as I have drafted them over the years for town clerks and town attorneys and corporation councils throughout the state of Connecticut, what we do with the explanatory text is walk the public through each provision of the charter, each proposal within the charter. If it's simply several items and several proposals, then it simply recites those specific items. As is the case in Fairfield, where there's been a very substantial reorganization, restructuring of the charter, it does require an article by article review very similar to one that I did in Middletown last year. So the text is prepared by the town clerk and ultimately approved by the town attorney, and has to be ready by, if the town clerk is there, I don't know when the ABs start going out, has to be ready for the time that the absentee ballots are being returned and sent out to voters. So it's a pretty simple request. It's a simple proposal, and I urge the RTM to take the committee of the RTM to take this into account, and urge you to support it and authorize it a week from tonight if you can. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if the town attorney wants to supplement my testimony.
No, I'm good.
I knew that was the answer. Okay, thank you, Attorney Mednick. Are there any questions from the body present? Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara for District 7. I am also excited to have this before us to be able to effectuate what the state had intended us to do and not the Board of Selectmen. And it's concerning that the Board of Selectmen made a resolution that they didn't have the power to make. I also wanted to point out that the statute that gives the RTM the authority to authorize the town clerk, if we so choose, to write an explanatory text, also empowers us to form a committee so that we could write our own explanatory text. It's not called an explanatory text, it's called concise arguments, summaries of arguments in favor and against. So we could have, once we approve the town clerk to do explanatory texts, formed committees, a committee, written summaries, gotten public comment on those summaries, and gotten the full RTM to vote on that, and provide the public with even more information and opinions about this very important proposed revisions. But because of the condensed time frame, we don't have that ability to do anymore if this is going to be on the ballot for November. So I really regret that that was taken away from us and that we were not counseled appropriately on that ability. I'd also like to note that some of the language does not seem appropriate to me. First of all, it's built off of the resolution that the Board of Selectmen passed. So we really can't say, whereas the Board of Select Persons, in accordance with CGS Section 7-191E and F, hereby adopts the following question to be placed on the ballot for a referendum. That, I don't know, maybe it needs to be in past tense or something, but it's very awkward and odd for us to be passing this in our own resolution, something that the Board of Selectmen has already done. I understand setting this up factually, that this occurred, but it seems somewhat problematic for us to be saying this.
Is that a question, or is it just?
I'd like
you
this
want a
to be
response?
amended, if possible. I mean, this definitely kind of needs to be amended.
Well, I can assure you that it wasn't the intention to do anything but give the historical background as to why this is before you, and that was the only intention. And if it was misinterpreted, then I would apologize for that, and I assume Attorney Mednick would join me in that. But the purpose is the limited purpose of either authorizing the explanatory text or not authorizing the explanatory text. That is the sole purpose of this. And if you're of course free as a body to amend the resolution so long as it doesn't go beyond that.
And I have a question about that as well. Oh, Attorney Mednick, did you have, I'm sorry. If
Yeah, I was just going to simply suggest that we try to establish a historical context. The real important provision of this resolution is the be it resolved provision. if you want to delete the rest of it, it makes no difference as long as you provide appropriate authorization. So the real operative provision is the resolution portion of the document. And so, and there's some tense issues I just took a look at myself. But I think that's the real key is you have authority to resolve it. How you want to establish the context is really up to the RTM. That's within your entirely within your discretion.
How are we supposed to authorize the town clerk to write an objective summary of these ballot questions when the ballot questions themselves are not objective?
Yeah, I believe that is a classic rhetorical question, so I don't think I'm going to answer it other than to say that that's what was passed by the Board of Select Persons. And as Attorney Mednick pointed out, the sole purpose here is to either authorize or not authorize the explanatory text pursuant to the state statute.
Have we checked with SOTS or the SEEC to see whether or not this ballot question, this omnibus question containing a lot of opinions, is okay, is lawful, is complies with statutory requirements of neutrality?
I defer to Attorney Mednick on that, but we considered everything, and that was one of the things that was considered, and we did not seek, to answer your question, approval from SEEC or the Secretary of State's office, because I don't believe that it's required. Attorney Mednick, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that in any way.
May I say that this is an omnibus multi-part ballot question. It's been used, I've used them in municipalities throughout the state. The objective of the omnibus is to try to lay out as many of the principal changes in the document as you can with a very substantial lead-in sentence used all the time. I started developing them about 10, 15 years ago because they were, we thought, useful in terms of educating people to what is in the charter. Two of my commissions this year and two of my legislative bodies this year have not gone with the omnibus. They've gone with a very simple question: do you support the charter as adopted by, is proposed by the Charter Commission and approved by the whatever legislative body there is? I'm not a big fan of those, but I don't have a vote. I do think the omnibus approach is an attempt to lay out the principal portions of the document. And when you couple that with the explanatory text, it gives the public a real good feel for what's in the document. So I don't have any question that this is but a legal provision. It's been used many, many times, and there's never been a legal challenge to my knowledge, and I'm not aware of any cases to that effect either.
I'm talking about it substantively with the specific words used that are modifying and are clearly positive, and opinions like streamlined. That is not objectively true. It could have been phrased a lot differently. And I doubt that this actually passes muster with the required neutrality.
That's your opinion. The neutrality is in the explanatory text. This is a position that was taken by the Charter Commission and by the Board of Select Persons, and they're entitled to their position. They're putting that position on the ballot. The document that's prepared by the town clerk has to objectively review the document and present it that way to the public. And so that's, I have no doubt in my mind that this is an entirely legally permissible and appropriate question for the ballot.
Perhaps I phrased it improperly, and it's an issue of advocacy for a position, but I know that that exists in the statute, and it's not permissible.
In the explanatory text, yes, you're right.
I didn't think it was limited to the explanatory text.
Well, I'm not aware of any such language in charter revision.
Okay, I will try to find it.
And the appointing authority is not entitled to take a position on an issue that may be controversial.
I will try to find that specific language, and I would like to request that this be reviewed to ensure that we are approving a ballot question that is legal.
You're not approving a ballot question. It's already been approved.
It's in our resolution.
It's been sent to the Secretary of State. And what you're being asked to approve is the resolution to approve the explanatory text. The rest of it is all historical, a delineation of what has occurred. And so, as I said earlier, if you don't want to approve the whereas clauses, I have no issue with that. We tried to be helpful in terms of laying out the historical context. The real key is your authority to approve the request, to approve the town clerk to develop an explanatory text for the benefit of the people of your town.
I also have an issue with the language in the last paragraph that reads, with the assistance of Charter Council. So it reads, the representative town meeting authorizes the town clerk, comma, with the assistance of Charter Council. According to the statutory language, the town clerk is supposed to write this herself, and it can be reviewed by our town attorney. I'd like that language removed.
That would be fine. Again, as Attorney Mednick explained, it's up to you how the resolution reads, so long as it authorizes or doesn't authorize. I guess authorizes the explanatory text to be created. But I don't want to, dance around the reality and the fact that the creation of the explanatory text should have the eyes and the language of an attorney, of course, the town attorney, and Attorney Mednick is a valued asset that we hired for this specific purpose, and because he is an expert in this area. So I don't want to suggest that Attorney Mednick would not participate in this process, and I'm not going to speak for the town clerk or Attorney Mednick. I'll let him chime in, but I am quite sure that that is the custom and practice of all municipalities that have explanatory text created as a result of a resolution like this.
I don't know how it can be if it directly goes against what the statute says, which is such explanatory text shall be prepared by the municipal clerk, subject to the approval of the municipal attorney, and shall specify the intent and purpose of each such proposal or question, period.
I don't think that language prohibits the town attorney or an attorney working in collaboration with the town attorney from reviewing the text. I don't think that that's problematic whatsoever. I don't think that there's anything illegal about it. The statute does not prohibit it expressly. And indeed, it would be kind of wrong not to have the expertise of an attorney helping the town clerk to draft the explanatory text. It's a collaborative effort.
It's all supposed to be in plain language so that the voters can understand it. It's not legalese. The town clerk was elected by us to do these kinds of duties. This is why she is vested with this power in the statute. There's no reason to have an attorney writing this. People are better at writing for other people. Lawyers didn't get it.
Mr. Baldwin, when you speak, can you speak closer to the mic?
Thank you, Representative Vergara. Representative Bastilli, I believe, is virtually questioned.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, through you to Representative Vergara. Representative Vergara, could you please clarify your comment earlier? I'm not sure that I understood. So we have the RTM has the power to vote on the actual like language on the ballot, as opposed to the explanation to the voters?
No, we don't have the ability to vote on the ballot language.
But we have the ability to vote up or down on the language that will be presented to voters with the question. Like,
No, once we authorize the town clerk to write this explanatory text, which I do believe that we should, so that the voters are knowledgeable and have all the information they need to make these decisions, comes out of our hands, and it's up to the town clerk to write this in an objective and concise way.
so it's in our purview to approve that the town clerk write the language.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
We could have had the ability to write our own explanatory like text called summaries, which we could have actually spoken in a less objective way about the pros and cons of each of the proposed revisions, but we were disempowered, and that ability and authority was taken away from us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bastilio. Representative Carson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you, I guess, Attorney Mednick, just so I have clarification. Can you hear me? Is that better? Laura Carson, D4. So the actual ballot resolution that's put forth to the voters, that can be opinion, because I was under the impression, I've learned through this whole charter process, through someone said, that a ballot initiative or resolution that you want to put through for like this, it can't be opinion-based. So when I read the first line, make it easier to use and understand, that to me is more of an opinion. I thought it had to be straightforward, factual language. So I'm wrong maybe, but you're saying that it can be so put in there that way, an opinion? Attorney Mendez?
That is the opinion of the Charter Commission and of the Board of Select Persons who are presenting that ballot question to the public. And that's the belief of the the appointing authority that has placed the item on the ballot. I believe that is a legitimate explanation. That's a legitimate description of what they have done with the charter.
Okay, if someone had written a letter about this, and she said it's illegal to put an opinion in a ballot resolution, but you're saying that's not true, but I don't have the wherewithal.
I don't believe that is the case.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carson.
Representative Bateson had a question.
Representative Bateson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. I'm thinking about what Representative Vergara said. If I was the town clerk and I was assigned this task of putting together the explanatory text, I would want help with it. I mean, I've followed these meetings. I think I have a pretty good beat on it. I'm sure the town clerk does too. But if I was assigned this task, I'd be like, I need help. Like, I got to put this stuff into, cogent, unbiased format. What is going on here? So I would reach out to Baldwin. I would reach out to Mednick. And quite frankly, I think that's the responsible thing to do. And as long as I'm town clerk, as long as I'm not prohibited from doing it, quite frankly, I demand the right. So I think it's in our best interest to allow that process to happen and not prohibit the town clerk from soliciting any responsible party's advice or knowledgeable parties. That's my thing.
Thank you, Representative Bateson. Nobody else? Representative Zesma.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. I don't have the statute in front of me, but does it clearly have any limitations on the length of the explanatory text and any contents so far as it has to be, it pertains only to the various changes being made. I mean, I just want to make sure I understand what, if any, limitations there are, whether it's size or content.
I do not believe there are any size limitations on the length of the explanatory text. Steve, you can weigh in on that?
Yeah, there is no real limitation. What I have tried to do is I usually do it because ultimately it's going to be converted into a poster. So I usually draft them so that they're on legal size. And I never go more than 4 pages, and very rarely go four full pages. One of my charters this year is 4 pages, and 12 font, so it's a large font. And to try to go through chapter by chapter, article by article in Fairfield, the changes in each section. And there's no limitation, but as a function from a point of view of functionality, you want to make it readable while people go to the polls or when people get it in their envelopes with their absentee ballots. I want to make sure that it's pretty clear and direct. That's the challenge in drafting a good explanatory.
Thank you, Attorney Mednick. I have one more question. When you are providing a 4-page explanatory text, how many questions does that normally correspond to?
Depends on the town. In Middletown, they had 2 last year. In my other 2 communities this year, as I told you, they used a very, very simple question. And I've used 4 pages in both those towns. In fact, one of them has far more extensive substantive changes in one of my towns and even in Fairfield. And so that will run the full 4 pages. It's really not based on the questions. One of the other towns I consulted with this year had 4 changes, and therefore they had 4 separate questions. They were totally unrelated. So the possibility of, so that they, it worked best with the limited number of issues they addressed. They did a 6-week charter process. They went with the 4 questions. I'm not working on that explanatory text. I do not think that will be a long one. So it really depends on what's in the body of the document, not the number.
Thank you both.
Steve, just to be clear, if I may, we're not limiting ourselves to 4 pages. There is no such limitation. That's your customary practice.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So if we need more.
That's usually my recommendation, but the town attorney is correct. They want to, if there's a need to go longer, you should go longer.
Thank you, Representative Sesma. Representative Spolier?
Representative Spolier, District 4. Sorry, I'm back here. Question. So just to be clear for the voters, this explanatory text on a form gets handed to them as they walking in the door to vote. So they have, if I'm trying to get to work in the morning and I know who's on the ballot, I know that there's a question, realistically, are they going to have time to read this? So I guess my question is that when it's provided, and as a town, I'm not sure if anyone's here to answer that, will we be providing that to our voters ahead of time?
I can answer that question.
You need to speak a little closer.
Sorry, I missed the button. It's the intention of the administration to widely publicize the explanatory text, which again is perfectly legitimate within the statute as not being a promotional item, because it is and must be an objective description of the substantive changes in the document. So it will be not only on the posters that are required by state statute, but it will also be disseminated on the CRC website and anywhere else, in addition to the absentee ballots, where it must also be included.
But it's not actually on a ballot, so it's just on a separate piece of paper or 4 pages or whatever we decide.
In the actual voting location, it must be on, I believe, a minimum of 3 posters located in the voting area.
Okay, thank you.
And I always recommend that you post them at the public libraries and all other public facilities where you expect people to congregate in advance of the election.
Thank you, Representative Spolier. Anybody else follow up? Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Representative Garskoff, District 5. I heard two different things. I want to make sure I have this right. So I heard an objective text, and I heard it doesn't have to be objective. It can be opinion. Wait, are there two different texts we're talking about here? Can you help me?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Representative Vergara was referring to the questions which are to be put on the ballot as voted upon and approved by the Board of Select Persons. I believe her inquiry was about the legitimacy of the questions, the omnibus questions that they have approved to be on the ballot. But that is not the item which is before you. What's before you is merely the authorization of the explanatory text, which must be objective.
I missed the button too. Did I hear Attorney Mednick say something did not have to be objective?
I don't think he said that.
The question on the ballot represents the position of the Board of Select Persons. They've made a judgment that this document is easier to use and understand, or that it has modernized language and references throughout. It updates and expands definition. I would argue that that's their position and what they believe is included in a charter. And is that objective? Is that subjective? I guess it depends on whether you're for it or against it, I imagine. But that language is not unusual language that I have seen in documents, in omnibus questions throughout the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
So, I don't know if I want to call it objective versus subjective. I think it is the position, it is the question that they believe illustrates what is in that document in the best way that they chose in terms of describing the product of the Charter Commission and the Board of Selectors.
Thank you. Yeah, as a wordsmith, I would call that subjective. But anyway, thank you. So the language on the ballot can represent the position or the subjective position of the proposing Charter Commission or Board of Select people, but the actual explanatory text needs to be objective. Do I have that right now?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Garskoff. Representative Spolier.
I'm sorry, I have a follow-up question. Two follow-up questions. Representative Spolier, District 4. What if we vote no on this and it gets turned down, then what happens? What does that mean?
That simply means
no explanatory text.
Right. The voters would not receive the explanatory text in the absentee ballots. It would not be up on posters, and it would be incumbent upon people to try to figure out what the substantive changes are, excuse me, in the rather large charter revision that is what's coming before the voters.
Thank you. And I have one other question. I'm not sure if we could ask this. I know our clerk is here who does the ballot, and I just have a question as to, will there be any other items on the in the November election that includes other explanatory text? So not only are our voters coming into the ballot place having this as explanatory text, but they're also going to be, I believe, one or two other items on the ballot that will require this. I didn't know if you were able to answer that or if we could call up our clerk.
Good evening, Betsy Brown, Town Clerk. There is a constitutional question on the ballot, and there is explanatory text regarding that amendment.
How many pages is that?
We haven't gotten all of it yet. However, it is a trifold, two-sided. That's what we're supposed to be getting from the third-party printer, state's office.
And would they be providing posters at the polling places for us to put up?
Polling places are under the jurisdiction of the registrars of voters, so they'll be receiving the posters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. This question is to both of you. Since it's required that the explanatory text is objective, who determines that it is objective? So if Betsy's going to write it and you're going to review it, how and who is the determinant to make it sure it is objective?
I believe the statute says that it's the town attorney who must approve it to make sure that it meets the statutory requirement, including objectivity.
Okay, I trust you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. I think, in my right eye, Representative Kuhn.
This button. Representative Kuhn, District 7. I want a clarification on what Representative Vergara was saying about, it sounds like the timeline was truncated in such a way that we as the RTM have been prohibited or inhibited from providing a counter set of arguments to this brief that you will be putting with it. If that is true, what recourse do we have? Can we hold this whole thing up because this time was not provided to us?
The answer is that you could hold committee meetings because it must be passed by ordinance. And it requires, the statute requires you to have committees created with people who advocate for opposing positions, and the committees must then come up with what they believe are fair representations of both sides of whatever the issue is. And again, that's required to be passed by ordinance. So that's not to say that it's manifestly impossible. It is to say, however, that it is a very short window and probably a large hurdle if this body wanted to do it. They, however, could. Attorney Mednick can speak to how often, if ever, he's seen that in his 25 years of experience in doing charter revisions, but it's a provision which is there by statute, but is rarely, if ever, used. I would also, if I may, just point out that this part of the statute addresses all referenda. So it's not just for the creation of charters. It's any question which is going to referendum and query whether our charter itself, with the timelines that it has baked in it, allows for any such argumentative text, the back and forth of presenting of both sides of the issue. I don't believe that it's ever been utilized in the town previously, and the same, if not a shorter timeline, exists with respect to all referenda that the town is considering and putting on a ballot.
So is the timeline such that we are prohibited because this has gone to the Secretary of State and is expected to be on the ballot, or do we still have time, and what is that time for us to do that? And can we spend enough time that it pushes it beyond the date to get it in this fall?
I'll let Attorney Mednick speak to that question.
The town attorney is absolutely correct. This statute is not related to charter revision. So the timelines of charter revision and this statute do not mesh in any way, shape, or form. This RTM had the ability to adopt an ordinance regarding referenda We've had referenda in Fairfield for time immemorial. And as the town attorney pointed out, there's a very tight timeline in your referenda, so that even if you pass an ordinance, you have to have some real acceleration provisions in it to be able to comply with your current charter. So this ordinance, this statute existed. It exists generally for referenda. And in all the charters I have done, which are about 30 charters throughout the state of Connecticut over the years, I'm not aware of any community that's ever adopted such an ordinance. But it wasn't this charter process that prevented you from creating an ordinance. It's the fact that no one has chosen to propose an ordinance. And so it's too late, obviously, for this process where we are right now. The ballot has been provided to the Secretary of State, being prepared for the election.
How, excuse me,
Representative
point of
Vergara.
information, how,
Consider this ordinance for the future.
how was the RTM supposed to know we had this authority if we weren't counseled by our council that we had this authority? First. Second, we are restricted by time because our procedures require for RTM approval for items to be on our agenda for 2 months at least. We could have done this within the charter revision timeline. The charter revision timeline enables a town to have 3 years. If someone had told us this and prepared us for this, we might have been able to do it, but we can't now.
This, if I may, you don't have 3 years. It's 16 months from the date that the resolution is approved, and then you could put it out for another 15 months before you have an election. You have up to 16 months. This commission took 12 to do that. This particular ordinance that is authorized, that there's authority for in the statute, has nothing to do directly with charter revision. And a number of members of the RTM had followed the process throughout. And this has nothing to do with charter revision. So I think it's an argument that is really not an argument that's geared to charter revision. I think you should look around the state and see what other communities have done and think about what you want to do for the future. But I'm just telling you my experience. Most of the municipalities, in fact, all of the municipalities I represented, the larger municipalities, smaller municipalities, I'm not aware of any that has an ordinance of this nature, and it has never come up all my years doing charter revision as an item that was taken into account as part of a charter revision.
But there's always a first, and were we?
This may be the first.
It may be the first. Were we ever counseled by anyone, the RTM, about this as part of an opportunity or an option in this process?
It's not an option in the charter revision process. It's an option in the referenda.
But it's directly linked here because it has been linked in this meeting directly to the process of the charter revision.
I'm sorry, let me hear that question again.
This has been directly linked in this meeting to the charter revision process. So I would have expected at some point in time some council, I don't know who that would be, to tell the RTM about this as an option, as sort of I hesitate to use the word, but rebuttal to the addendum to the charter revision question that goes on the ballot.
I don't even know how to answer that question. It really has nothing to do with the charter revision process. And the RTM does have something to do with the explanatory text under the statute, but that is it. You're not the appointing authority. The RTM was not part of the process. Members of the RTM were invited throughout the process to pay attention to what was going on. The RTM was a significant issue during the process. In fact, we tried at one point during the process to actually address the issues of structure, which involved the RTM. but this statute was not part of the charter revision process. It is part of a referendum process, and you've had referenda for years, so I don't know how to answer the question, but I've never, in all the years I've done charter revision, this has never been an issue that has come up, and it's not been an issue that's part of the portfolio of advising legislative bodies with respect to charter revision.
Thank you, Representative Kuhn. Representative Brown?
Hi, Representative Brown from District 9. So I'm just curious, the language that's going to go on the ballot, is that baked in, or is there any way to suggest changes at this point?
That is the discretion and the vote of the Board of Select Persons, so it's baked in, and there's no way to change it. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's correct, right?
You are correct. The appointing authority approves the ballot.
I just think that the language is a little, I mean, I think it could have been improved on in that in some cases there are verbs used for these clauses: allow, modify, codify, amend, and in others, appointment of constables, make is verb, uniform standards. And so it's not really uniform in terms of the way it's written. And I think it can be, but it's baked in, it's a moot point. I think it could have been written better.
And I don't want to sound flip, but one of the reasons why you have explanatory text is for the very reason that the ballot questions are so short. Sometimes it's just one question, up or down. And even these 10 items that are listed in the ballot question are clearly truncated and could use explanation, which is why this resolution is before you.
Thank you, Representative Brown. Anybody else? Why do you always, when I go past, they raise their hand after a... It's like being a bartender, you know. You go by and then somebody's yelling at you.
Explains
Representative McCabe.
Explains why I never get my drinks. Representative McCabe, District 4. A question that wasn't answered. Exactly when will the explanatory text be distributed? Is it the election day, or will it be available to voters ahead of election day? And if so, when?
It must be included in the absentee ballots that go out, and the town clerk can tell you exactly when that date will be, but that's when it must be ready and disseminated.
Absentee ballots are distributed beginning October 7th.
And as a follow-up question, since it has to be created by October 7th, will there be an announcement so that voters who are going to the ballot box on election day will know that it exists and they can reference it?
It'll be on the town website, on the charter revision page. It'll be in the polling places. We'll have it in various public places. My office, we'll have it on the counter.
And it'll be posted as of October 7th on the website?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Nobody in the chat? We're all done with them?
I don't see anyone in the chat.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. Betsy, you better get home and start writing.
Mr. Moderator, can I just clarify something?
Yeah, sure.
October 7th is statutory. It's 31 days prior to the election is when absentee ballots start, just so you understand what the date means.
Thank you.
Representative Georgiadis.
So the people getting the absentee ballots will receive it in the mail, but the rest of everybody else, when will it be posted in libraries, around town, in town hall? Will that be at the same time? Okay, so that's required. It won't be like 2 days before the election. They will be posted it'll be around? And why is it only being posted on the charter revision page of the website? Will there be a link for all the information for all the amendments that are going to be on? So people, if they go to the homepage of the town website, there'll be like a access point there for them?
I know that the administration wants to and is very intent upon disseminating the explanatory text as wide and far as it possibly can so that the voters, as many voters as possible, get the opportunity to review it. And that certainly includes the minimum statutory requirements, but it's the intention to go well beyond those minimum statutory requirements.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. One more. Representative Zesma.
Thank you. Do the registrars or voters have any independent authority in terms of distribution, or is that a budget issue? Because obviously the more materials that you create, there's a cost to it. So how is that decided? Is it the administration works with the registrars, or the registrars are the ones who are selecting the sites that it's posted at?
Well, I would assume that the town clerk would coordinate with the registrars when it comes to the posters that are required to be posted. But in terms of the dissemination of the explanatory text in other places, I don't think that that is a role necessarily played by the registrar's office.
Betsy, when was the last time we had a referendum?
I can tell you when last charter revision was. As far as referendum, it had to be budgetary.
The last charter revision obviously had a referendum. Do you remember how
That
many?
was 2006.
Right, and do you remember how many questions there were?
There were 3 questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zesma. All right, I'm going to go around one more time. Pause right here. All right. Thank you, Attorney Baldwin. Thank you, Betsy. Don't stay up too late writing.
Thank you very much.
I know, but you might want to get a head start. We expect more than 4 pages. All righty. Next up is the Arts Commission ordinance. Jeff Steele is not here. Karen Wackerman will lead the way. Yes, you do.
Karen Wackerman, District 7. Hi, everybody. So this is an ordinance that several of us are sponsoring, Representative Pistilli, Spolier, Gale, Vergara, and Steele, as well as myself. And the goal is to create an arts commission, which I think the town had something like that at one point before I was in town, but a lot of people have expressed interest in this. And then additionally, in the last couple of years, a state statute was passed establishing a system for having cultural districts in towns. And if you can get that approval as a cultural district with the State Department of Economic Development, then the state will start to give you grant money for things you're doing. They'll promote your town on the state website, tourism website. So it's kind of a bonus in addition to just having an arts council. That's a bit of a project to have it be deemed a cultural district. So this ordinance creates an arts commission. It says that the first task of that arts commission is to work to get a cultural district created in town. And then after that, there are specifics about this becomes the Cultural District Commission under the statute, and there's specific membership and things like that. So I think it's really exciting. It would promote culture and art in our town and potentially bring in money and tourism. So that's what the goal of it is. So does anyone have any questions, or Mr. Moderator?
Any questions from anybody present? Representative Zesma, comment.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to thank everybody, Karen, you and all other members of the ordinance team who worked on this. I think this is a really terrific thing, especially considering our arts resources. So I'm very pleased, and I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. It's exciting.
Thank you, Representative Zesma. Anybody virtually in the chat?
We're all set.
Okay, thank you, Representative Wackerman. We'll be hearing this again next month, and we vote next month, or are we next month? Okay, our final item of the night is the artificial rubber infill ban ordinance. Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara for District 7. I apologize for the lassenger, but I'm having some coughing issues, so bear with me. Just really sorry. So this is an ordinance that it comes out of an appropriation we made in May. We voted on an artificial turf field for Roger Ledlow Middle School, and in our discussions, we received a lot of emails from a lot of different people and organizations, and we had a lot of hearty discussions between us as well. And out of those discussions came some consensus that we all agreed there should be some kind of baseline for these installations. And we agreed that crumb rubber infill was not an option that we wanted to consider anymore in Fairfield. And we put it into our resolution. So I thought that since we didn't, I thought it would be a good idea to create this as a baseline and put this into our regulations so that we don't have to revisit this issue all of the time. For the most part, the ordinance language has stayed the same since it was written in July. The co-sponsors are Cindy Parham, Jeff Galdenzi, Sharon Pastilli, Laura Carson, Will Diaz, Hannah Gale, Andrew Graceffa, Mark McDermott, Christine Brown, Drew Georgiadis. Attorney Baldwin helped me with the language, made it much better. At first, we used Westport to build off of, and I think that the way he crafted it fits much better into our town code. So for the most part, though, substantively, it stayed the same. It's contained in our real estate chapter. And I don't know if anybody has any questions about it.
Any questions? Anybody in the chat?
We're all set.
Okay. Representative Wackerman.
I'm fully in support of this, but your comment made me realize I didn't thank Attorney Baldwin, who also did a lot of work on our ordinance, so thank you.
Thank you. Representative Zesma.
So not to play favorites, but I also want to thank everyone who worked on this ordinance and Attorney Baldwin. I'm very pleased to see this so we can avoid not only the use of this material, but the confusion that was caused in the process. Thank you.
Representative Gerber, you keep coming off mute. If you want to speak, please put your name in the chat. Sorry.
Sound like someone's getting on a train. Right? So please mind the gap between the train and the platform. Okay, anybody else? All right, this will be coming back to us next month. That ends all the items on the agenda. We now will break out. We're gonna have to do it kind of in corners of this particular room into our Committees, let me just check first before we move to committee. L&A, do you guys have a quorum? How many L&A are here?
There's a couple of members online, Representative Lambert, and is Representative Ruggiero on LNA?
I'm here, Amy Ruggiero.
And you're on LNA?
Sorry?
Are you on LNA?
No, Marcy.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you.
So how many do you have in the room? 4 in the room? Okay, so you're good. I'm just trying to, like, if the bigger groups, I want to, yeah. All right, I guess let's put you guys in that back corner. Josh?
Mr. Moderator, are you saying that we're gonna talk on the phone, all of us?
Well, we have nowhere else to go. We have nowhere else to go, unless you want to go in that closet right there.
I'm just saying, when we do it without phones, it's almost impossible to hear our committee.
I understand, but this is what we got to work with tonight.
So, Mr. Moderator, is it possible to like separate in different corners of the room and then?
I'm working on that, Representative Pastilli. I'm just trying to find out how many people are here physically in each committee. Well, you're going to dial in. They're going to dial into the number, okay? Everybody's dialing in, but I mean, if somebody wants, if you guys only have 4, that you can go in that room right there if you want. It's all chairs in there. All right? All right. Ed and Rec, how many are in the room? 1,
At least
2,
5 of us.
5, 6. All right, well, I guess Ed and Rec will go in that back corner over there. Public health and safety, how many you got in the room? In the room, 5? I guess you can go in that corner. Public works and planning, what do we got? How many? You have 6? You stay, I'm not worried about on there. I'm worried about like how to, so you guys stay in this corner. Finance, how many we have?
We're back corner. I'm just muting this.